Nestled in a lush valley surrounded by towering pines and rolling hills, the man's home stood as a serene retreat from the hustle of modern life. The gentle melody of chirping birds filled the air, harmonizing with the soft rustle of leaves swaying in the breeze. A small creek meandered nearby, its crystal-clear waters glistening in the sunlight, reflecting the vibrant colors of wildflowers that dotted the landscape. It was this idyllic setting, a blend of nature's finest elements, that offered him solace and a profound connection to the world around him. In this rural haven, life moved at a slower pace. Mornings were often greeted by the rising sun casting golden rays through the trees, while evenings came alive with the enchanting symphony of crickets and distant owl calls. The man cherished his daily rituals, tending to his vegetable garden, sipping tea on his porch, and taking long walks through the woods. Each moment spent in such tranquility deepened his appreciation for the fragile beauty of nature. Yet, beyond the boundaries of his peaceful existence lay a wilderness filled with both wonder and unpredictability. The area was known for its diverse wildlife. Deer would occasionally wander through his yard, while families of rabbits would frolic in the fields. He had learned to respect their space, marveling at their grace as they navigated their natural habitat. But beneath the serene surface lurked unspoken challenges faced by these creatures, the struggle for survival in an ever-changing environment. Little did he know that this tranquil morning would soon give way to an extraordinary encounter that would shatter his sense of peace and reshape his understanding of compassion and responsibility toward the wild inhabitants nearby. The man, named Daniel, had spent the majority of his life cultivating a deep bond with the natural world. Growing up in a bustling city, he often found himself yearning for the peace that only nature could provide. After years of longing, he made the bold decision to leave behind the concrete jungle and seek refuge in the countryside. His friends often joked about his obsession with the outdoors, but for Daniel, it was not merely a hobby, it was a calling. With tousled hair and gentle green eyes filled with curiosity, he radiated warmth and kindness. He was the type of person who would rather spend an afternoon watching the clouds drift by than scrolling through a smartphone. Daniel felt most alive when surrounded by trees, their sturdy trunks serving as silent witnesses to his thoughts and dreams. Each day, he devoted time to studying local flora and fauna, documenting his observations in a well-worn journal that reflected his passion for wildlife. His humble home was adorned with mementos from countless hikes, feathers, unique stones, and photographs of the animals he encountered. Neighbors often sought him out for advice on gardening or animal behavior, knowing his heart was as expansive as the land he cherished. They appreciated his approachable demeanor and willingness to lend a hand whenever they required support. Daniel's empathy extended beyond humans. He viewed all creatures as part of an intricate tapestry of life. He frequently volunteered with local wildlife organizations advocating for conservation and animal welfare. To him, every creature held intrinsic value, deserving respect and protection. It was this profound love for nature that shaped his character and guided his actions, setting him on a path that would soon intersect dramatically with the challenges faced by wildlife in his area. Little did he know how pivotal this connection would become in the days ahead. It was an ordinary afternoon when Daniel first sensed something amiss in the stillness of his surroundings. A sudden rustling drew his attention, drawing him away from the pages of his journal filled with sketches of birds and notes on local flora. Curiosity piqued, he laid down his pencil and stepped outside, where the scent of pine mingled with the faint aroma of freshly turned soil from his garden. As he rounded the corner of his home, he was met with an extraordinary sight that sent a jolt of surprise through him. A mother bear stood just a few yards away, her powerful frame silhouetted against the backdrop of the green foliage. His heart raced with equal parts awe and apprehension. It was rare to see such a magnificent creature so close, and instinctively he understood the gravity of the situation. But what truly captured his attention was not just the bear's imposing presence, it was the two small cubs nestled close to her side, whimpering softly. They looked disheveled and terrified, their fur matted and dirty. The sight was heart-wrenching, and Daniel's shock quickly transformed into acute concern. He knew that a mother bear would only approach a human if she was in desperate need, perhaps something had happened to them in the wild. Daniel cautiously stepped forward, heart pounding, feeling the weight of uncertainty and responsibility. The bear's eyes locked onto his, revealing a mixture of fear and desperation. He sensed her protective instinct glowing beneath her rugged exterior, conveying a silent plea for help. For an instant, time seemed still as he contemplated the delicate balance between respecting her space and reaching out to aid her young. He instinctively knelt down to appear less threatening, whispering gently to soothe both the bear and her cubs. As he did so, he was acutely aware that this extraordinary encounter would forever change his understanding of wildlife and his role in their lives. As Daniel knelt in the grass, his gaze fixed on the two cubs, a wave of concern washed over him. The first cub, a small male with soft brown fur, had a noticeable gash on his side where the skin was torn and matted with dirt. The wound looked painful and raw, oozing a mixture of blood and grime that spoke volumes about the ordeal he had been through. Each time the cub shifted, he emitted a low whimper, his fear palpable against the backdrop of the tranquil scene. The second cub, slightly smaller and trembling, had scratches across her face that marred her innocent features. The fur around her eyes was ruffled and stained, hinting at a recent struggle. As she pressed closer to her mother for comfort, Daniel could see the shimmer of unshed tears in her big, round eyes, filled not just with pain, but with a deep-seated confusion about their circumstances. Both cubs bore the weight of distress, their movements hesitant as if each step reminded them of their vulnerability. The mother bear remained vigilant by their side, her eyes darting between Daniel and her young. He could see her muscles tense with anxiety as she attempted to shield them from any perceived threat. It was clear that this protective instinct was rooted in sheer desperation. She knew instinctively that without assistance, her cubs faced an uncertain future. The entire scene felt heart-wrenching, the stark contrast between the beauty of the natural surroundings and the suffering of these innocent creatures weighed heavily on Daniel's heart. In that moment, he realized that the challenges facing wildlife were often invisible until one bore witness to them firsthand. His resolve solidified. He knew he could not simply watch from afar while these cubs were in need of urgent help. This encounter was more than an unexpected visit, it was a call to action that resonated deeply within him. As Daniel knelt before the mother bear and her cubs, a tumult of emotions surged within him. The instinct to help was overwhelming, pulling at his heartstrings as fiercely as the wild winds swept through the valley. He felt an almost primal urge to reach out to aid these innocent creatures in dire need. Yet, beneath that instinct lay a shadow of apprehension. This was still a wild animal, and one wrong move could provoke not only the mother bear's protective instincts but also endanger his own safety. He found himself acutely aware of the bear's tense posture and fierce gaze. Despite her vulnerability, she was still powerful, and her primary concern was her cub's protection. Daniel wrestled with the reality that getting too close might result in an aggressive response. He had read enough about human-animal interactions to know how quickly things could escalate in such situations. The last thing he wanted was to scare them further or put himself in a dangerous position. Yet what stung deeper than fear was his empathy for the little ones. Quelling his racing heart, he took a deep breath, recalling the principles of wildlife safety he knew by heart. He reminded himself that compassion must come with caution. Should he try to approach them slowly and carefully, or keep his distance and call for professional help? Doubts tugged at him, each option carrying its own risks and rewards. Daniel's mind raced through solutions. Could he find a way to entreat the mother bear's trust, or should he immediately seek assistance? He weighed the risk of delay against the urgency of their suffering. Ultimately, Daniel resolved that genuine compassion meant taking steps to ensure their safety. His heart longed to take action, yet he needed to find a way that respected both their fear and his instinct to protect. In this moment of conflict, he realized that acting thoughtfully would honor both his love for wildlife and the inherent wildness of these creatures before him. Determined to help the cubs while keeping a safe distance, Daniel slowly backed away from the bear family, retreating into his cabin to gather supplies. The soft thud of his heart echoed in his ears as he rummaged through his first aid kit. He picked out antiseptic wipes and gauze, hoping to provide some comfort to the injured cubs if he could earn the mother's trust. With a small bowl of honey and a few pieces of apple in hand, a treat that might entice them, he crept back outside. His movements were deliberate and measured, designed to communicate peace rather than threat. The mother bear watched him closely, her sharp eyes following his every step, yet she remained rooted in place, torn between instinctual wariness and the desperate need for assistance. Daniel placed the bowl of honey and the apple slices on the ground a few feet away from the family, then stepped back and crouched down, making himself as small as possible. The sweet aroma drifted through the air, and after a moment that felt like an eternity, the male cub cautiously ventured forward. His hesitant steps hinted at both curiosity and lingering pain as he sniffed at the offerings before him. With a quiet gasp of relief, Daniel observed as the cub began to lick the honey, forgetting for a brief moment about his injuries. The female cub followed suit soon after, her small nose twitching as she sampled the treats. Daniel took this opportunity to assess their wounds more closely from a safe distance, noting that both cubs flinched occasionally but appeared to be gaining strength with each nibble of food. Feeling emboldened by their interest, Daniel slowly retrieved a clean cloth to wipe away grime from the male cub's wound, careful to maintain a calm demeanor so as not to alarm the mother bear. Every action was accompanied by soft murmurs meant to soothe both bear and cubs. Although aware of the risks involved, Daniel's compassion drove him forward, each gentle motion showcasing his commitment to helping these vulnerable creatures in their time of need. As Daniel continued to tend to the cubs, the mother bear remained a formidable presence, her instincts sharpening with every movement he made. She stood close, her body tense and ready, eyes flickering back and forth between Daniel and her young as if assessing whether the man was friend or foe. Her maternal instincts were palpable, a powerful drive shaped by both love and desperation for her injured cubs. Every slight sound, an unexpected rustle of leaves or the soft crunch of fallen twigs made her muscles tighten further. Daniel could see the way her ears perked up, keenly attuned to any potential threat. As she watched over the cubs, there was a fierce determination in her gaze. It was clear she would do everything in her power to protect them from harm. Her posture conveyed urgency. She would approach any danger that came too close. When one of her cubs whimpered softly, the bear's instincts kicked into high gear. She stepped forward in a heartbeat, stepping protectively between Daniel and the cubs, emitting a low growl that resonated with both warning and a plea for space. Her behavior was a stark reminder of their wild nature. Although she had brought her young to Daniel, desperation clouded her instincts of trust. For a moment, fear flashed across Daniel's mind as he processed the intensity of her reaction. Yet he also recognized the extraordinary bond they were sharing in this vulnerable moment. The bear's fierce love for her cubs mirrored his own compassion for them. He lowered his gaze, offering slow, calming gestures as he continued to speak softly, trying to reassure both mother and cubs that he meant no harm. In that delicate balance of tension, Daniel marveled at the instinctual drive that compelled the mother bear to stand guard, fiercely protective while also revealing a deep layer of vulnerability. Her actions highlighted the fierce realities of wildlife survival, a battle not only against external threats but also against their own pain in seeking help. As Daniel respected that maternal energy, he felt more determined than ever to help this fragile family heal amidst such raw intensity. As Daniel continued to care for the cubs, he began to sense an unspoken connection forming between him and the bear family. Each time he spoke softly, his voice steady and calm, he noticed the way the mother bear's posture relaxed just a fraction, as if she were beginning to understand that he posed no threat. Her fierce gaze still held a watchful intensity, but there was a flicker of curiosity mingled with her protective instincts. In those moments, Daniel felt a profound recognition that transcended species. Both he and the bear were navigating a shared experience of vulnerability and survival. Every time he gently cleaned a wound or offered food, he could see a shift in the cubs' demeanor. Their trembling lessened and they gazed back at him with cautious optimism, reflecting an emerging trust that offered him hope. One afternoon, as he sat quietly on the ground, Daniel stretched out his hand, palm upturned, offering a piece of apple while maintaining eye contact with the mother bear. To his amazement, she took a tentative step forward, allowing her curiosity to guide her before pausing to assess the situation one last time. The moment encapsulated an understanding that transcended words. It was a silent agreement that they were allies in this fragile moment. With each passing interaction, Daniel began to recognize the bear family not merely as wild animals but as sentient beings capable of emotion and connection. He found himself reflecting on their shared lives, the similarities in their struggles and fears, creating a bridge of empathy that deepened their bond. The mother bear's fierce protectiveness became intertwined with moments of shared understanding and acknowledgement of their respective vulnerabilities. As Daniel tended to the cubs day by day, he realized that their relationship was evolving into something beautiful and poignant, an interspecies connection built on trust, compassion, and mutual respect. This awakening transformed his perception of wildlife. No longer just subjects to observe from afar, they had become partners in a journey toward healing. And in this process, Daniel discovered not only the strength of his own compassion but also the profound ties that bind all living creatures together in times of need. As Daniel dedicated himself to caring for the cubs, he couldn't shake the feeling that their injuries were not merely the results of a random encounter with nature. There had to be a backstory behind their condition, a deeper pain hidden beneath the surface. One evening, after tending to their wounds, Daniel found himself reflecting on the plight of wildlife in his area. The bear family's struggles began to take shape in his mind, weaving a narrative colored by the harsh realities of modern life. He recalled recent news reports about poaching and illegal hunting activities encroaching upon the surrounding woods. The area had once been a sanctuary, but increasing human activity had compromised the safety and well-being of its wildlife. It was plausible that a poacher had inflicted harm on these defenseless cubs, possibly leading them to flee in terror from gunshots, leaving injuries in their wake. Daniel also thought about the deforestation happening near his valley. The trees that had been habitat for countless animals were disappearing, along with their natural food sources. With fewer options for sustenance, bears like this mother might resort to dangerous ventures closer to human residences in search of food, exposing themselves to grave dangers. The image of the mother bear desperately trying to protect her injured cubs filled him with sadness. It became clear that their injuries were not just physical scars but deep-rooted indicators of a bigger problem, a reflection of a world that often neglected its most vulnerable inhabitants. As he continued to nurse the cubs back to health, determination bubbled within him. This family represented more than just wildlife. They symbolized the urgent need for action to protect their natural habitat and advocacy against the threats facing all creatures relying on it. Daniel's role extended beyond healing. He felt compelled to raise awareness and contribute to protecting these innocent lives from a future constantly overshadowed by human choices. It was not merely about saving the bear family but about committing himself to the broader covenant of coexistence with nature. Understanding the urgency of the situation, Daniel realized that he could not tackle this challenge alone. The well-being of the bear family depended not only on his care but also on professional intervention and community support. He swiftly formulated a plan to reach out to local wildlife authorities who were trained to handle such delicate cases. After a night spent pondering the best course of action, he made a list of numbers and resources that could help. The next morning, with the sun rising over the hills casting a warm glow on the valley, Daniel picked up his phone and began making calls. He contacted the local wildlife rescue organization, explaining the situation and stressing the importance of their expertise. Over the phone, he sensed enthusiasm mixed with urgency from the responder, who assured him that they would send a team as soon as possible. This glimmer of hope fueled Daniel's resolve even further. But he knew that professional help would also benefit from community involvement. Inspired by the collective responsibility they all shared for their natural surroundings, he reached out to neighbors and local conservation groups, sharing the story of the bear family and the looming threats they faced. As he spoke, he discovered that many residents were equally concerned about the safety of wildlife in their area. Several individuals offered their support, promising to help spread awareness and gather resources for rehabilitation efforts. With each conversation, Daniel felt a growing sense of solidarity within his community. Volunteers began signing up to act as guardians of the nearby forest, monitoring any signs of poaching or illegal activity. Together, they aimed to educate others about the importance of coexistence with wildlife, ensuring that future generations would inherit a safer environment for all creatures. As he watched the bear family from his porch, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was not just about healing a few animals, it was about fostering a movement that emphasized shared stewardship of nature. Daniel's hope blossomed alongside his connection to both the bear family and his community, illustrating a united front against the threats wildlife faced. In this journey, he had found allies in both man and beast, highlighting the power of collaboration in safeguarding their beloved world. In the days following the bear family's encounter, Daniel found himself deeply affected by the experiences he'd shared with them. He spent contemplative evenings on his porch, reflecting on the poignant realities of wildlife conservation and his place within it. The emotional weight of the mother bear's fierce protectiveness and the tender vulnerability of her cubs served as a powerful reminder of the fragility of life in the wild. Every rustle in the bushes or distant call of an owl seemed to echo with the injustices faced by these creatures in an increasingly dangerous world. Daniel felt a swell of empathy, understanding that their struggles were a reflection of broader issues: habitat destruction, poaching, and human encroachment threatening the delicate balance of nature. It struck him that these bears were not merely animals he would observe from afar, they were sentient beings correlating with his own hopes and fears for survival. With each passing day, as the bear family began their slow recovery, Daniel's commitment to advocating for wildlife intensified. He organized community meetings to discuss practical steps for protection and rehabilitation. Stories of local poaching incidents surfaced during discussions, igniting a spirited dialogue about what could be done to combat such threats. Encouraged by newfound allies, Daniel began visualizing a landscape where cohabitation was possible, a harmonious existence where wildlife thrived alongside human society. His burden transformed into passion. He felt a responsibility not only to care for specific animals but also to raise awareness about the systemic issues that endangered them. Visits to local schools illuminated future generations on respect for nature, fostering an early understanding of environmental stewardship among young learners. With every voice added to the movement, he felt hope blossom. This journey was far from easy. Realities weighed heavily on him, but with each action taken and relationship formed, Daniel discovered that through collaboration and collective resolve, change was possible. He learned that meaningful connections were at the heart of conservation efforts and understood that every little effort mattered in forging a sanctuary for both humans and wildlife alike in this fragile, interconnected world. As Daniel looked out over the valley that had become both his sanctuary and the battleground for wildlife, he felt a deep sense of purpose solidifying within him. The experience with the mother bear and her injured cubs had not only opened his eyes to the struggles faced by wildlife but also ignited a commitment to advocacy and action. He understood now that every individual has a role to play in preserving the fragile balance of nature. The lessons learned were profound. Empathy is essential not just toward animals but also toward the interconnected ecosystems they inhabit. Each time a tree falls or a habitat is destroyed, it ripples through the web of life, impacting even those who might not initially seem affected. Daniel envisioned a future where communities actively protected their natural surroundings, where understanding and compassion guided human interactions with wildlife. In sharing his story with others, he realized he was fostering an awareness that could inspire change. Every discussion he held about wildlife conservation created ripples of enthusiasm and responsibility among his neighbors. As more people rallied to support conservation efforts, Daniel felt hope blossom like the wildflowers that painted the landscape each spring. Their collective actions transformed into a powerful call to protect the wilderness that they all cherished. Daniel knew the journey ahead would not be easy. Challenges would come and setbacks might occur. Yet, he felt fortified by the knowledge that he was part of something larger, a movement toward coexistence with nature that emphasized respect for all living things. His heartfelt message to everyone was clear: protecting wildlife is not just an individual effort but a shared responsibility that requires cooperation, education, and unwavering determination. As he watched the bears from his porch, feeling their spirit intertwine with his own, he recognized that by working together, humans could forge a brighter future for both themselves and the creatures they share this world with. In this fragile connection lay the promise of hope, casting a light on the path toward healing for both nature and humanity alike.